Okay. Sorry about that. I got a little bit interrupted. I'm gonna click around for a little bit because I want to tweet that I'm actually doing something. Hey, I'm actually broadcasting. Okay. It's a little weird to hear my voice echoing the second time. There's little cats around too, so you hear them meowing. It's not being devoured. So the previous 10 minutes were not broadcast, but this one is. So there's that. How do I get linked to tweet myself? Nothing quite as jarring as logging in here in Wheat channel. Oh. Holy shit, how do I do this? Now you can enjoy me listening to a commercial before it allow me. Let's go ahead and mute that completely. To link, yeah. let's get back into it. Okay, so Silver Arrow shows up, and he's a decker who says chummer way too often. And the problem with writing a character like that is that you tend to think that way after a while. So he says chummer, and so it was really hard to break the habit of me not saying chummer, because we did it first as a joke, like ha 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 chummer, and then it became a thing that we couldn't stop doing. All of the other characters, none of them have a catchphrase except for Max Foley. Max Foley says, "Am I right?" And so it was really hard to stop thinking that way. And it's a really annoying habit to say the same thing over and over and over again at the end of every phrase. Now you can be nice to Silver Arrow, and I'm going to be nice to him even though I don't really need him. Of course, chummer. So we try to tie into a lot of different stuff. Old Sam is not a delineated character in the original module. So we used Sam Watts from Dead Man's Switch. Just looking, just looks like shit. I'll post the first 8 minutes where I talked about Stuffer Shack, even though we're going to go there in just a second. Alright. So, you end up with this kind of runner DOS crash pad, and it's crappy. There's dead bodies all over the floor. There's a dog that tried to eat you. And we wanted to approach it as this is a job, but different people go about the job different ways. So then he's like, hey, there's a bunch of morons in this Stuffer Shack nearby. And Silver Arrow shows up right next to you because he was eavesdropping when you were talking to Sam. And then he follows you to the meeting. Now there was a developer conversation about professionalism and how the runners should act, and there was everything from a pink mohawk to black trench coat to Deadpool's red bodysuit. Levels of seriousness that people wanted to approach this with. We got, I don't want to say we, I got lectured about how runners needed to act more professional. And the story that I was told was the one that ends up in Silver Arrow's conversation about how one of the runners didn't like how unprofessional the other runners were acting, so he shot him in the head and put him in a trunk. Or put him in the trunk and then shot him in the head later. Which to me is just, murder. It doesn't seem very professional. I mean, if you don't like the guys doing wheelies on the way to the meet, maybe just don't work with that guy again. But it was one of those stories that was like, it was too good of an anecdote not to include. But that's a very specific anecdote, and there's not a lot of places that we can put it in. This is the hangman's joke. We called the bartender a beer tender because she doesn't care about your problems. She's just sitting back there smoking. And I could read you all this dialogue. I have a hard time listening to other people read dialogue when I watch other people's videos, especially because I wrote it. And I don't know, it's just hard for me to hear people say it, or they say words differently than I would pronounce them. Not wrong, but all right. So here is our talent pool. You have Gunner, Blight, Shiver, El Jefe, whose name is Larry, I think, Luna, Padre, Sucio, and Neville, and then Silver Arrow came with you. So we tried to have, you have the two deckers, which are, later they become our pair of deckers if you're and main NPC, your PC 0, as it's denoted in the editor. If your PC 0 isn't a decker, you can run around the decker with these two in tandem. You have Susio and Gunner, who are shooters. You have Padre and Blight, who are mages. You have Shiver, who is just not great to start off with, but becomes kind of a super murderer. Luna is our Fizzad, and then El Jefe is our Rigger. So we want to cover all of the archetypes and give you some variation. So if you won't have a little squishy character, if you have a mage or a decker, then you can double up and get Susio and Gunner to go with you, or you can bring the mages. We wanted the mages to everybody to have kind of a distinct flavor for their character. So Gunner, troll, super professional, security type of lady. Blight is just kind of a creepy dude. Like I was given very little direction, but like a lot of input, but not input that I could always use. So we just made him kind of egocentric and just treats everyone as disposable, which some people do. He does it to their face, which is not usually a good way to make friends. Shiver is based off of a short story that my brother Mark wrote, which was just it's an amazing short story. I've posted it some places. I try not to post it too much because I don't want it to wander off and have other people take credit for it. It's not my story. It's Mark Hendrickson. But it's this story about a Tyr noble son, Graceland Everclear, and he goes out to just to piss off his dad, get some cyberware, and embarrasses his family politically in Portland, and so they enroll him in the army and send him off to fight in the California border, and he got put in kind of a group of screw-ups. And I don't know if you know much about Tyr Taranger's politics, but they like to bury their failures, and these guys were no exception. So they went out and they were basically sent into a die situation. Like there was no survival possible. So Shiver's unit got wiped out, and he was injured. And then after the forces pulled back, leaving them dead, he was still alive enough that like scavengers coming to get cyberware or weapons from the melee scroungers in the area of Northern California. They showed up, and he was alive enough that they kind of dragged him back, thinking he might be worth something. He was elven nobility after all, and sold him off to Mitsuhama as an experiment. So he was in a clinic in Mitsuhama and got just crammed full of all the cyberware because they wanted to see that zero essence barrier that people just die. Like they were playing with that barrier by just cramming people full of cyberware. So he's a screw up and is fast, and anything that would make him less fast is not in there. So he doesn't have a reflex trigger on his wired reflexes. He's always in fast mode, which means everyone else is extremely boring, which is why he kind of vibrates in place. He's looking around at normal speed for him, but to everyone else it just looks like he's always like twitching, and like his eyes are doing nystagmus, where they twitch when you're trying to look at something. So it was one of my favorite short stories that my brother ever wrote, and introduced a character who was just like on the edge of burned out. Like if he has to get a data jack, he's going to die. He has so little essence left. So trying to write a character that was wasted away, but had kind of manners and training and kind of a regal bearing was something that was interesting to me as a writer. And you have to ask yourself when you're doing one of these mods, if this is the only one that you ever do, what characters do you want to make sure end up in that mod? And Shiver, for me, was the one. We put in a bunch of other characters just because we wanted to flesh out our group. But yeah, Shiver was this guy has to be in the game. So he carries around an unloaded Ruger Super Warhawk, at least in the fiction he does. And then in Shadowrun 2nd Edition, where my brother made the character, you could load your quickness in bullets every time you had a cylinder. So he would clear his cylinder and reload it and clear it again, fire 12 shots every initiative. So he just had pockets full of bullets, and his gun was always unloaded because he was just so fast it didn't matter. He could just load everything and then fire them off and then reload and fire them off, and very few things could deal with that. Now, story-wise, Shiver is not good at target differentiation. So he, in the story that my brother wrote, and I'm going to have to find a link for this because it's not going to make sense otherwise, he was in like a stuffer shack situation where there was a couple of lowlifes in there with him, and he heard behind him, like somebody like snap the clasp on a pistol holster and start drawing a weapon behind him. And so he, loaded his bullets and fired behind him as quick as he could. And it wasn't until he turned all the way around he saw that it wasn't some maniac with a predator. It was just some normal people. And so he killed a bunch of people on accident. And then, the other people, the other lowlifes in the stuffer shack, tried to kill him. So he ended up killing them too, just, fight or flight response. And then, threw away his gun and ran off into the barrens. And that's the way the story ends. It's a really good story. I really like it. So we tried to write Shiver as hopeless, but just he's a layered character. He has a lot of nuance to him, and I like that. It's a lot of fun for me as a writer to do that. El Jefe is named after one of our friends, LJ. His personality is pretty similar to LJ's. LJ and I do not always get along, but we wrote Leonard as a cop, and he's accused of being dirty in the game, but all the stuff that didn't make it into the game that you will never ever hear or see, he wasn't actually dirty. He's just undercover. So he's supposed to come to a meet like this, kind of get identities or as much information as he can about all of these people and Mr. Johnson, then turn it over to Lone Star. Basically start building a jacket or a portfolio of crimes for all these characters. So when we were originally doing our scope, we wanted to have kind of individual missions for all of the NPCs. And that included LJ, or Leonard, and he would have a mission to kind of go get his jacket, which was under internal investigations, IA. So he was actually a little bit dirty, but he decides that not to turn on you guys, and in order to kind of clear his name, he had to get rid of evidence of his crimes at Lone Star. So it would have been like a turnaround point for him. He would have been a full Shadowrunner. In fact, that's the story of most of these characters. Of these characters, only Susio, Nebel, and Gunner are actual Shadowrunners. Everyone else is starting out, including Silver Arrow and you. Your characters, whoever you want them to be. We tried to leave the dialogue options open with your etiquette, so that you could have the character that you picture in your head would be an option, so that when you play and go through, that there are options that make sense for your character. And I also realized there are people who play this game just for like the combat and running around and killing things. So one of my brothers, I have a lot of brothers, one of my brothers will play through Final Fantasy, and he will click, and Final Fantasy for me is all about the story. He just likes the pretty visuals and kind of the combat and button mashing. So he will literally say, fuck your mother, and then just push this dialogue skip button. So it will be combat, and then like a mini game, and then fuck your mother, fuck your mother, fuck your mother, and then another combat, and like he just plays through it for the combat. So I tried to keep that in mind, so that if you just click the first dialogue option, it will take you completely through the most of these conversations without a hitch. Like you don't have to read them. You can just one conversation over. Because they are kind of long, wordy conversations, and I liked writing them, and I hope you like reading them. But if you don't, you can totally skip them. So we have to come meet the local talent. My personal group is usually I have like a decker or a social character. So Gunner, Shiver, and Padre are usually my group. You can swap out Luna for Shiver or Luna for Gunner. None of the characters are good at this starting juncture. I think we have to go talk to 3 of them. So we tried to give all the characters a distinct thing about them. So Neville is a Decker and a Gossip. Silver Arrow is just kind of a nerd, but not in a bad way. But you can walk around and talk to all of these guys. They all have interesting things. I tried to tie. We were hoping to have cameos by put cameos in for Twitch, Ghost 2, Walks Inside, and Sally Sung. They didn't make it into the game, but Padre is looking for Twist. Sorry, I called him Twitch. Padre is looking for Twist. Luna is looking for Ghost because she's actually pregnant with his kid, so she wants to like earn his respect. Luna. Everyone's kind of doing something. Susio, when we were writing this, the Gamergate thing was really big. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was tell a story about harassment to people who are not likely to pay attention to a story about harassment. So Susio was going to have a Decker harassing him, and that's why his comm links are always burning up. Not because he's always looking at porn, although he is always looking at porn. So he's meant to be kind of a disgusting ha-ha character. But there's a Decker out there who's targeting him, who's burning his sins and making his life just miserable. And then you would have to either get your Decker or go in as a Decker and deal with the enemy Decker. Now again, none of that stuff made it into the story because we had a year and a half of development with a volunteer crew of 20 people, and it was pretty grueling to try and get things done at the end there. And we just, a half-finished game that's brilliant is not as good as a fully finished game that's just competent. That's what we kind of figured. So we finished it. So then you go to U93. Now, okay, so in U93, if you haven't played this before, they take away your guns at the door. And the mechanic we used to take away guns at the door came back to bite us in the ass over and over again because it was a script that defaulted to your guns not being usable instead of having your guns always be usable, and then if they have this tag, then they're not usable. But when you save something with a tag on it, it stays forever. So we had to, at the beginning of every scene after U93, wipe off that tag, and it didn't always work. So that's why sometimes you'll get the error where you can't use your weapons later in the game. The people who are the least affected by that are Padre and Luna, but I will also bring, I don't really like Blight. It's my least favorite of the PCs, just personally. I will bring Shiver though. I'll bring Gunner. So. So Padre we wanted to write as a pacifist character. Somebody who didn't really belong as a Shadowrunner. He's a Catholic priest from the Order of St. Sylvester, and he doesn't like killing people, which is problematic because you use him to kill people for pretty much the entire game if you take him with you. So this Underworld 93, this was the original opening of the game before we put the doghouse in place. So this is what we wanted to be in place and have like down here on the bottom of the third paragraph. It said, "Oh, did you see Gillette was here?" And we wanted to use your character's name because it's something that not everyone will notice, but draws you in. You know your character's name. You know your character better than we do because we don't have any idea what character you're going to play. So every place we could, we tried to use your character's name or your gender or race. So if you're a troll, then they'll, we actually had to write custom scripting to make sure they use the correct Shadowrun racial slurs for trogs or greenskins or knife ears. We have our little bus that drives up, and the doors open, and then the doors close and drives off, which is not actually animated. We just physically drag the prop across, but we did it at such a speed that your brain fills in the gaps between like animation, the 60 frames per second, so that when the bus pulls up, you just picture the wheels moving, even though they're not. They're totally stationary. It's just a flat prop. And then we had the doors open. We have 2 states for halfway open, all the way open, and then we just reversed them and then had to drive off. But if you look in the editor, the doors are actually sitting here invisible. Not that it matters. And then my Ford AmeriCar prop is right here, which was just like everything was a van or like kind of these rounded sedans, and I wanted just kind of a boxy, ugly car. Because if it's going to be the car of the future, it needs to be distinct enough that people see it and don't like it. And so for me, the Ford AmeriCar is like that kind of generic late 70s, early 80s boxy sedan. Like, you can't look at that and say that it doesn't look like a car. It totally looks like a car that we've all seen, especially if you grew up in the 80s. One of the other things we ran into here is that this scene is huge. Like, you have the little street out here, and then you have all the people inside, and we ran into memory limitations. We originally populated it with like 100 characters around in there, but it became such a drag on memory that we didn't want it to crash on people, and it just became too much. Now, this underworld art, this marquee, Mercurial, U93, this Grim Reaper, not Grim Reaper, what's his name? Sharon, the guy who guards the river Styx. That was all done by James Lee, and so we asked him what he wanted us to put in the game for him, and he asked for us to put Jolene on the license plate on this Eurocar Westwind. That was his request. But like, it's just like, these are all things that exist in Shadowrun's Underworld 93, obviously. Puta is Maria Mercurial's album, means whore in Spanish. Don't call people a puta or you will get your ass kicked, especially by Spanish speakers. But if you say it with the right tone, really by anybody. Maria Mercurial, and then these were all bands that James and DJ came up with. I don't know if they're actual Shadowrun bands or if they're just their bands in Shadowrun, but we tried to give the sense of a neighborhood in decline. So you have, busted up cars, homeless people, graffiti everywhere, and then right in front of this club, there's 2 limousines, a police car, Eurocar Westwind, a taxi. Just kind of the idea that these things don't belong in this area, even though they're here. They're here to see Maria. Newt. And that's one of Chris Clue's portraits for Shadowrun. That's the one that he got for being a backer, and I thought it was really cool, the stuff that he said about Shadowrun. So I'm just gonna bribe him and get past him because I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So I thought it was really cool, the stuff that he did when it came to Shadowrun, and even some of the comments that he's making more recently. If you don't go to this weapon check, you'll set off this alarm, and the only way to get past it is to either bribe this guy. Did you drop this? I saw you drop this $500 while you were patting me down and finding no concealed weapons, and he just takes it. No, I'm sorry, this is the default portrait, this Cyber Troll. The one from Dragonfall. So, You get a karma for bypassing security. Everybody else's weapons get seized. That'll come up again in a little bit. Kyle Morgan is here. Kyle Morgan is not important to this story at this point, but we wanted to kind of seed him in so you have a little bit more interaction with him than just he's the bad guy at the end who there's no reason for him to be there or be involved in this at all. Just because why would there be a Welsh assassin trying to stop you from saving Mercurial? And it was very difficult to write because I'm not familiar with the Welsh accent. I don't know if you can probably hear it. I'm an American. I grew up in California. I live in Phoenix now. And that was enough for me to not, like, I know some Spanish, I know some Samoan, like the littlest, tiniest bit of Tongan and Russian. So I had to go look up idiomatic phrases in Welsh and work them into the conversation and describe his accent to people who have never heard it. Perry Weir is right here. He is dressed up as this cute girl, and there's no reason for it other than that's what it says in the module. I found it personally amusing, and I also found it amusing that people gave that to us as an error or a bug. This is Tellin. He's the guy you can get all sorts of. You can get information about all these guys. I'm not going to worry about it because I've already read all those dialogue options. I had to mine them and change them. You can buy a backstage pass from Aaron here. Harlequin is somewhere in here. This portrait was by Thomas Smart. He did an amazing job with these. Maria's a brunette in most of the artwork. Thomas liked her better as a blonde, and so we compromised, and here she is. She has her cyber arms kind of cut off there at the shoulders, and then that steely blue gaze and the blonde hair. And then Todd, our playtester, his request was that we include this poem that a friend of his had written. So this Quicksilver Liquid Fire is the only one of the 4 songs you can listen to or read that wasn't actually in the modules or the Shadowrun fiction. This one is new. It's custom for our game, just because he had a friend that wrote the poem, and so we put it in. So then, Yo soy tu madre. I'm your mom? Alright, whatever. So, I don't have time to listen to the concert. I'm a badass Shadowrunner. I gotta go get a job. So originally these poker tables and stuff were filled with people, but it crashed the scene. So we had to pull them, and we ended up with mostly these static assets for the crowds. This dude tells you pound sand. Now you have a couple options here. We wanted to have like 4 different options. One of the most frustrating things for me as a player is when I can think of a solution that the game didn't think of, especially when it's an open world game like this. So we wanted you to be able to bribe your way past, or find like a backstage pass, or steal a backstage pass, or we ended up buying one from Aaron. We cut off most of the others. You can also set fire to the trash can in the bathroom, which is what I'm going to do now. But we wanted everyone to have kind of, you can hack the maglock and get into the back room as well, which I think gives you the black hat armor that's not as good as what I'm already wearing. Yep, it's armor too. So these bathrooms are gendered just because it was an interesting programming quirk that we wanted to figure out how to make objects only usable by a certain gender. You set fire to that. And then while you're standing here, this dude runs up and is like, oh no, the bathroom's on fire. Abandoning his post. hope to get further away from the scene of the crime before anyone. We should have probably cut down the open space in here. But sometimes you work under time constraints, and good enough has to be the answer. So you go upstairs. There's a bunch of dudes hanging out. You get a little bit of karma. We're going to go ahead and spend that to up our weapon skills. Ooh, 8 karma. So, we have our music posters everywhere. Now, we put a lot of work into these. They're mostly grunge music. I like grunge music, so but all the names are meant to be kind of jokey, except for I wanted a straight Nirvana poster, so that's them. Jet Black is a rock star in the Shadowrun fiction. I think he ended up becoming like a vampire or something. He just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. So if you're familiar with the Elvis is still alive thing, then that's kind of Jet Black. Like there's always this rumor that he's still alive. He's actually a vampire and is kind of laying low, but he's still alive. Nirvana, and then the Nirvana smiley face with grunge, and then another Nirvana poster but with angels with filthy souls, which is a reference to Home Alone, which is a weird cross section to try and get a reference to. I understand that. You have Messerkampf, which is what's his name, band from Dragonfall. We put that in there. We had played Dragonfall, obviously, and we wanted to make sure that it was in there, but he only has like one poster, and all the rest of these are kind of all over the place. But getting his facial tattoos on any sort of face was really difficult to draw, and then to put it at the isometric ratio, and then have small enough that it was a poster, but large enough that you could identify it. That was all really difficult. So a lot of work went into that stupid poster that's here right behind the Omega Fizz vending machine. So this is a Soundgarden poster. This is Jason, one of the guys who worked with us on this, was a DJ in Europe, and so we went and pulled one of his a picture from one of his old gigs and put it on here. So it's Synth Lord Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is a reference to Jason, even though Jason claims, I got the picture directly from the website and it said it was a picture of him. He claims that's not him in the picture. I call bullshit, but that's what he says. So we have Concrete Dreams, more Jet Black, Nirvana, Soundgarden, then Mercurial posters, more grunge. Dunkel's on 2057, which is like 3 years in the future and hasn't happened yet. That's actually an anachronism, but one that I'm totally willing to accept because I'm a big fan of President Dunkel's-on. I'll talk about that in a little bit more. This dude is seducing a young starlet and it's like, ooh, yeah. And then if you're a guy and you come in, he's like, hey, get out of here, man, I'm busy. Just another one of those kind of gendered instances. When they work right, they're seamless. And when they don't work right, they're super confusing. So we're glad that they work right most of the time. The young girl and her underwear runs out. You walk into this room. So I talked about the second level problem, how the first level is usually the last level that you build in a game, just so that the difficulty it's not impossible for a new player. The second level, you've often gone over as many times as the first level. I've played through this scenario hundreds of times. And originally we had a much tougher fight. And if you've died in this fight, then you know that it's already pretty tough. The characters were not scaled correctly, so that the enemies that showed up were much more powerful than you. Like you're a 38 or 40 Karma Shadowrunner at this point. And there's a 90 or 120 Karma Wizard, Max Galaxy, ran in and would just fireball, 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 and just murder your entire group. And now if we were playing as testers and going through a superhero, yeah, it was a difficult fight. But PC 0 as you're playing, and these guys with no weapons they don't have anything to do. So so you just got murdered over and over, and it was super frustrating. Take it from me, who did not play through a superhero because I wanted to test the balance. So Max Galaxy got cut, and kind of at a late stage. Like I think the game was already published, and we ended up going back and tweaking this encounter in the next scene. And we cut Max Galaxy. So this picture in the corner that talks about the triumph of Max Galaxy and how it's been attacked with scissors is a joke to ourselves and people who know this story about about what happened, that we cut that character. So we come in here, and Max Foley's a standard douchebag. He's back there. There's a very fancy bathroom. Not pristine, but not as dirty as anything else in this entire place. So, this conversation, when we started working on this was the one thing that I wanted. I wanted a conversation where, depending on what your etiquette was, you had a completely different conversation. So Max Foley knows who you are, by reputation only, but he knows what your strengths are. So when he pitches you the job, he pitches the job to your character. So my character, Gillette, is a Shadowrunner. So there's a very kind of professional back and forth deniable assets vibe. If you're a security, then you talk about, hey, like asset protection and bodyguarding. If you're a ganger, you talk about how you and your gang can keep them safe, and academics can get more into the informational side of it. There's like 30 different versions of this conversation based on what your etiquette are. If you have all the etiquettes, you can still only choose one, because there's all the branches for all the etiquettes, and then it comes back down to the rest of the conversation, which was really kind of difficult to wrangle, but to me is worth it. So so here I have another reference to one of the scenarios in the Stuffer Shack, which is in the Shadowrun Returns store on Steam, not store, library, whatever. That you held off an assault by Halloweeners and the Ancients. Now, if you played through the Stuffer Shack scenario, then you know that if you start off with a brand new character, then you just basically stop the holdup. So there's 3 bad guys. One of them has a shotgun, one of them has a pistol, and one of them has a SMG. And then you have like kind of the employees who run around, and you have Larry the drug dealer, who shows up and is an undercover cop with a shotgun. So he helps you. I'm getting a lot of interruptions for Saturday at 11. So Larry the drug dealer can help out. The difficulty ramps up very quickly if you have other setups. So if you have more armor, I think it's like ends up being 2 points of armor, something really low, then there's like a gang that shows up to help with the holdup or stop the holdup. I don't remember off the top of my head. And if you have more armor than that, then you have kind of a larger gang show up. And then if you have the highest level, if you have the most armor, I think it's 8 points of armor or more, then you have the Halloweeners show up. So these guys hold up the Stuffer Shack. The Halloweeners come in the front door, and the Ancients just come in the back door. So you're in the middle of this gang war while trying to stop a holdup and try and keep anyone alive. So in Stuffer Shack, we didn't program holding the bathroom door shut. That didn't seem like a especially noble thing to do. But you can actually make it into the manager's office and close the door and let them shoot it out, which is a perfectly valid response, but it gets everyone killed. All the NPCs will die if you do that. And then, so we did that. So when Max talks about the Halloweeners and the Ancients, I'm not assuming that you've played it, but I'm saying that the word spreads that if you play Stuffer Shack, then you kind of know what it was your character did that got you on people's radar. Which was you saved the Stuffer Shack from 3 people holding it up at 3 a.m. Or the Halloweeners and Ancient showed up and you kicked all their asses and sent them home in body bags. Whatever it was. So, ooh, a shot caller, so professional. Am I right? And he, you can dither with him about price. He's trying to stiff you. He has more money, but I wanted to write that negotiation as more than just like a roll. Like, oh yeah, let me roll my charisma. Okay, you have to give me more money. Like, I wanted it to be an actual discussion between you and the NPC. Okay, so I love Deckers. He actually has a Decker working for him, Gummy Bear, who shows up later in the game. What's our advance? I think my team here is worth more than that, and you can try and talk him even higher. Alright, so then Maria shows up. So Maria shows up here, and we start to get kind of a different. Maria has the 3 different personality types. She has the vixen, the one that's kind of on stage, the performer, Amazon type thing. She has this one, which is the school teacher, and then she has like the starry-eyed little girl, like she's not capable of doing anything. So when she's in this version, she's very nice and pleasant. When she's in Amazon, she's shouting in different languages and shooting people, and when she's a little girl, she's just incapable of helping herself. She needs protection. We were very careful because we didn't want to make her mental illness, her schism, a joke. So it's not like, haha, she's a little girl now, I have to save her. Like, she has issues. So that when, like, if you mess up this opening scenario and you're getting your ass kicked, then Maria will go full Amazon and start shooting, and she's actually better than the rest of your team, like quite a bit better. And she'll come through and help, and then like you have to ask yourself, and it actually is a dialogue option. If Maria ends up saving your ass here, in the next scene you can say, hey, it doesn't look like she needs our protection, and then Max says, she has issues, like she can't always perform like that, and and then these dudes show up with weapons and start shooting things. One of the things you can do is you can spam the kill all command, but it will break the scripts that are written into these guys dying. So most of the errors that people say when they're funny thing about that Spanish thing that dude says, my brother's married to a Hispanic lady, so his family helped with the translation of that absolutely filthy Spanish thing that you should not ever say to anybody. And then these guys are awesome. Their names are Skidmark, Trigger, and Jericho, because we wanted to give them kind of dumb names. Sorry for the buzzing. Then we have these ley lines, which are unfortunately set out in the middle of the floor with not much to do. Luckily Luna, the reason that I wanted to use the magical characters is because they are less handicapped. Like Gunner can't use her VZ88. She does have some stuff that she can do, but mostly she can't shoot anything right now because the weapon is checked at the door. She has to run over here and punch a size dude. And as a giant troll, she's doing 3 damage, which is not a lot of damage. And then we have 3 more dudes run in because this fight was not difficult enough. This is actually, the 3 of them running in is based on you doing damage to the existing people. So I'm in way over my head right now, but I can turn on Killing Hands for her. That'll help. And she can do more damage with a punch than she can actually do with anything else. Why is she only? Oh, I moved her. That's why. Start closing some of these guys out before they kill me to death. Oh, you got a spirit off. So this dude over here is a shaman. He'll summon his water spirit, which is a huge pain in the ass. If you knock his AP down to 0, the spirit disappears. And I think I will actually let this go badly so you guys can see Maria be a badass. Jack's a lot. That's not a savory name. So, Maria's a badass. She's now on our team, being all Amazon. But she has better weapons and everything than your entire team combined. Now, since I have a decker, I could actually come over here and hack the turret. I'm not going to because it's a huge waste of time. And you have to spend like 4 actions in combat to be able to get it working, which is a huge pain in the ass for a little SMG on a rope that will hit these guys. So Newt and Talon show up at the end to kind of wrap up this encounter, even though yeah, so he says, well, what the hell is the deal with Maria? Newt and Talon show up. All you guys have their weapons back, which should definitely turn the tide of battle because then I can throw auto fire this dude. We kill a shaman, the spirit didn't go away? That's not good. Now over here you have this countdown, 8 rounds until Lone Star arrives. If you were still dicking around when Lone Star gets here, I don't remember if it's you just fail or what, but it's not meant to be played that way. Alright. Everybody runs for the door. Being a badass. I think everybody else exits, but if my main character exits, then we see we originally wanted to have a gentler turn there. It's not supported by the isometric review. We tried to do a 3/4 turn to kind of get and we didn't. And Jason made fun of the rad 90-degree turn. So that's why when you pull out and make that 90-degree turn, there's a dude there that says, "Wow, rad 90-degree turn." And you go to Yoshiro's. Now Yoshiro's doesn't really show up in this game in the module. Like it's all busted up and on fire. But it is, it's the set piece at the beginning of Bottle Demon. So we wanted to reference it. And also it's Yakuza associated, so it has Max Foley is also Yakuza associated, so it's a good place to do that. And we don't have to worry about messing up continuity because there's a restaurant called Yoshiro's that you don't actually go inside. We were going to do it where you ended up at the end of this game, you guys were at kind of Yoshiro's celebrating your victory, and then as you go to leave, then what's his name from Bottle Demon shows up and is looking for a team, which is the very beginning of Bottle Demon, but then we stop there. So then if we had a follow-up game, we would do that. That scene got cut, and so did the follow-up, so it all worked out. We crashed. So we crashed Newt's van. Max says, "Yeah, go talk to the repair guy. There's a repair station kind of over there." Now there's 2 long fights here kind of in a row. And I know it caught a lot of people off guard, but these are 2 very different fights. The first fight, you don't have the weapons that your characters use. So you have to kind of cobble together, and you get the sense that they suck. But then in this combat, you have a target-rich environment. You have people coming from every direction, kind of coming out of the woodwork, which gives your characters a chance to be better than just anything. These guys show up. Now, if you look at them, their names are Colin, Mike, and Lori. Colin, Mike, and Lori are in our gaming group. Well, like my tabletop gaming group is Colin, Mike, and Lori, myself, my wife, and my brother. So this was like a nod to just them being awesome. Like they're some of my favorite people. So we put their names in the game, and you get to shoot them. Which is not super important, but I like doing. Then I'm just going to run over there and punch him. I'm just going to shoot him from here. And this is kind of a murder fest, so I think I'm going to cut it here, and I'll just pick up and continue recording after after this. All right, so peace out. I'll be right back.